Thank you. Sure, sure. Okay, thanks for that. Let's jump into this. So we thought we would just introduce ourselves really briefly. My name is Tom Karadza. I co-founded a brokerage in Ontario with my brother called Rockstar Real Estate. We help people buy rental properties. We've been doing that for 17 years. And then we discovered Bitcoin, and we realized, oh my gosh, we need to now convince everyone who bought rental properties that they need to add Bitcoin to their lives, or even perhaps sell some of the rental properties for Bitcoin. So that's who I am. And let's just get a quick introduction before we jump into this topic.
Hello, I'm Dale Mychasiw. I'm from Quickbit in Regina, Saskatchewan. I own a Bitcoin crypto bricks and mortar store, as well as a e-commerce site. We provide education. We sell hardware wallets and all of the accessories, for the Bitcoin, catering to the Bitcoin industry. So,
cool. Travis MacDonald. I'm the CFO at Block Rewards, working with Seb to help employers pay people in Bitcoin. CPA, CFA, all the fun financial designations. Found Bitcoin about 4 years ago and realized how much my education had been incorrect. So.
And I'm Aaron Twa, Victoria Kayak. My wife Joanna and I own that company, ironically, out of Victoria. And we have a Bitcoin treasury in our company. We find that makes us more flexible in our tourism industry, and that's what brought us to this conference.
Okay, so we had a little chat before we got up here today, and we thought the best way to kick this off was this little video that these guys online, that I don't think any of us really know directly, but I think the handle is Opportunity Cost. They put together a 2-minute video explaining how inflation even exists today. So we thought just to set the tone for the rest of the discussion is like, why do we always talk about inflation? Like, how does this thing even exist? Why is it even in our lives? How did it get here? So we're in agreement that that video is still a good thing to do. Okay, so if we could just play that 2-minute video, guys, that would be perfect. Thank you. Is that possible?
Island, November 1910. 7 bankers meeting in secret to create America's central bank. We just can't call it that. The 1907 panic nearly destroyed us. Banks failed, fortunes vanished. We want to control America's money supply, create booms, trigger busts, and profit from both. And how will we do that? We'll create money from nothing, loan it to the government, and charge interest. Legal counterfeiting, my friends. But there's a cost. Every dollar we print steals value from existing dollars. It's a hidden tax that flows directly to us. And it gets worse. If we ever get off the gold standard, governments can print money for wars. Endless wars become possible and profitable. Since Americans hate central banks, we'll call it the Federal Reserve. Sounds governmental, doesn't it? It's not. The president will appoint board members, but we'll pick who he appoints. We'll have 12 regional banks. Looks decentralized, democratic even, but New York banks control them all. That's us. You're probably wondering how we're going to get this through Congress. December 23rd, 1913. Most of Congress home for Christmas. Perfect timing for passing unpopular legislation. I'll publicly oppose our own bill in Congress. They'll pass it thinking they beat Wall Street. We'll fund university chairs, write the textbooks. They'll teach our system as economic science. Beautiful. Every American born after this will inherit debt on money we created from nothing. Generational servitude. The Federal Reserve. Not federal, no reserves. But everyone will think it's their government protecting them.
Good afternoon.
So that's kind of how we got here. Yeah, it's great. Isn't that great? So well done. Yeah. So yeah, again, we big shout out to Opportunity Cost to put that together. And then just so you know, the Bank of Canada was formed, it was 1934 during the Great Depression. The US Bank of Canada came, and we have the same principles. We're basically like a derivative of the Federal Reserve, running a debt-based Canadian dollar here in Canada. So it's all connected, all tied together. And as a result, we get this inflation. So to kick us off, I wanted to ask Dale. Dale, by the way, is a huge Rough Riders fan. Are there any Rough Rider fans in here? Oh my gosh, there's one. Dale, There's one. Oh my gosh. We were talking about it. I thought there was going to be 0 for sure. But anyway, there you go. So Dale, why is inflation silent? Can you just explain that to us?
Well, I have to admit, as a Gen Xer, I've literally spent 46 years of my life not knowing that inflation was a tax. It wasn't until 2014 when I heard Trace Mayer say that inflation was a tax without representation. And when I thought about it, it was like, wow, you're right. You know, it's basically, it takes purchasing power away from us. And it's silent because it's outside of a regular tax, where a regular tax, we know politicians, they stand up and they say, we're going to be implementing the GST, this is how much it's going to be, this is what it's for, and this is what we're going to use the money for. So it's very clear when they implement a tax. So inflation is, as the video said, it's built in the system. It's the way the system is designed for that base 2% inflation. And it's also very nuanced because inflation can be caused by other things other than printing money. It could be supply and demand. If the weather takes out a orange crop in Florida, there's less supply, there's high demand, so the prices go up.
That to me would be normal economic supply and demand.
Normal, yes. Yeah, that would be normal.
I don't even
inflation.
associate that with inflation.
Yeah.
To me, that's just more demand than supply, so the prices are going to be driven up in the economy.
Yeah,
you're considering that inflation?
It's in the same. Yeah. It's in the same
price inflation
cloud of.
Sorry?
It's price inflation. It's not
yes.
monetary inflation.
Yeah.
That's an accurate pricing signal, I would say.
It's still in the big cloud of obscurity, right? Then you have market manipulation, right, where they're doing their base inflation, and then the government comes in to subsidize this industry because of whatever reason, and they print money to be able to subsidize. So that's marketed, manipulation, and so there's a lot of different things. That's why people don't, nobody stands up and says we're printing money because we need to, support this and this one industry. So that's why it's kind of vague, and I think that why it's silent is primarily because when they designed the system, as you saw in the video, that they said, they put the system together, but they didn't tell you we're going to be extracting wealth from you, right? So they don't tell you that. So they don't tell you that they rigged the game for you to lose. It's very similar to if you go to the casino and sit down at a blackjack table. The casino doesn't tell you that they've rigged the game in their favor. So that's why it's silent.
Yeah, and we're all sitting at the casino. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Aaron, over to you. Can you talk to us about how it's calculated? Like, how is this thing put together?
Yeah, so we're very familiar with headline inflation, CPI, Consumer Price Index. You all see that. It's on the news each night. There's other measures of inflation as well. You might hear them talk about PPI, Producer Price Index, the cost of production goods, multiples. These are just 2 examples of hundreds of different inflation measures. CPI, the one that we hear the most about, is the one that we tend to measure, say, our pay raise against. If we hear there's the Consumer Price Index, inflation is generally a basket of goods. I bought milk, I bought eggs, I bought a steak, and the price of that good went up 2% year to year. Consumer Price Index would be a 2% increase. And then we would want to go to our employer and say, look, I saw inflation was 2%. Could you please compensate me for that difference? It's on the, it's on the employees to go to their employer to ask for that wage increase. Now again, that basket of goods, those eggs, the milk, the steak, the measure of that inflation might just change the basket occasionally, and they do. If we change the steak out for chicken, a less expensive product, if we change the milk out for a milk substitute or something like that, we can then say reduce the inflation in that basket. Say it was only 1%, for example. If we roll the clock back to 1980s and we look at a measure of inflation in the 1980s, today we're truly facing about 10 to 12% inflation annually. We've just seen flight attendants legislated back to work. Flight attendants who are on average hourly making $12 an hour, trying to make ends meet, very difficult when you are getting, a 2% wage increase and facing 10 to 12%.
So why are you saying 10 to 12%? Where are you getting that number from?
That calculation, that basket of goods has changed so radically from the 1980s that today it doesn't even resemble, the measures of that inflation will swap a product out. Or they'll say that, look, your television is much better now in 2025 than it was in the 1980s. Therefore, we have to credit that basket a certain percentage. It's no longer, it's an incredible device now that so you're reaping a benefit of technology. Therefore, inflation is truly lower. This is
okay, because that's interesting. So that's the one you default to. I always go to like the money supply in the country and just kind of look at M2. And so M2 is the money supply, kind of like the liquid money supply floating around in the country. And from 1969, according to Canada, Statistics Canada, if you take it to present day, it's about 8% compound annual growth rate from that. And that's what I always look at. So it's interesting. You're looking at it slightly different. You're going back to the basket of goods, how it was calculated 30, 40 years ago, and trying to keep that true, and you're coming to about a 10 or 12% inflation rate.
Yeah, correct. And then again, this is just one measure of that inflation. And as you're saying, you're looking at the number of currency units that are out there in the country, and each state, country, around the world is increasing those monetary units that are in supply. So for instance, if we talked about just cash bills on the street worldwide, we're looking at 12.5 to 13% increase of those around the world. Then again, we know much of our currency is digital. Those digital units have increased, like you said, a measurement of what's in bank accounts, close to 8%, 7 to 8%, depending on your country. So again, another measure of inflation as well.
Cool.
If I round it, I say 10. It's easy math. I know at a 10% inflation rate, our money's purchasing power is cut in half every 7 years. Every 7 years, you've effectively lost half your purchasing power. Goes back
I want to get more into that. Yeah, okay, we're going to dive more into that. Yeah. Travis, can you jump in on this? I forget the question exactly I was going to ask you, but I think you can handle it, so go for it.
No worries. Yeah. Just the adjustments that you're referring to, also they call them hedonic adjustments, and it's something that again, my finance education I could have explained away, and it made a lot of sense when I learned it in university, because they're adjusting the basket for actual changes in consumer behavior. But what that kind of hides, and this is part of why inflation is felt so silently, is that you're making some of those adjustments because the money is broken. Those are reactions to the fact that the money is broken that then causes them to say, oh, well, your spending is different and therefore inflation is actually lower because you're purchasing less, you're purchasing chicken, which is cheaper than the beef you used to. And so it very much is the reason for us to not feel it is that, yes, our consumer behaviors are changing, but it's a reaction to the money being broken. And this is one also where everyone has their own personal inflation. We're referring to different measures of inflation. Your own personal CPI is your basket of goods, what you need to spend on. And so these are always compared to, these headline numbers, but everyone's going to feel that differently.
Okay, so we'll stick with you for a second. I'm just learning about the politics of this area, and I think the mayor was here yesterday. I don't know if he's here today, and I'm just kind of learning that sometimes there's some people who don't like that he's into Bitcoin and this whole thing. So when you look across the country of Canada, in the US and globally now, and you see people angry at different things, there's like an angst in society, more so than ever, as far as I've been alive. Do you tie that back to this silent inflation thing? Like, are people angry at the right thing? Or is inflation kind of a sneaky little way to make people angry, and they're kind of angry at the wrong thing instead of the base of the system, which is producing this in them?
Yeah, I would say they end up angry at the wrong thing, and I think part of this is just with the money, the money printing and all of this is, to your earlier discussion on the oranges and all of that, right? Like, that is an accurate price signal. If there's a storm and suddenly there's, a bunch of that crop gets wiped out. The accurate price signal is for those oranges to become more expensive because of the dynamics of supply and demand, until you have someone parachute in a bunch of money to say, okay, well, instead of them having to, other suppliers having to raise prices, we're just going to bail out and, print money to bail out the one that failed for whatever reason. And this is even worse if it's the banks where they're failing for their own incompetence rather than, acts of God. And all of what that does is just remove accurate pricing signals and cause it where everything is continually going up in price because of the money printing, and we're not getting an accurate measure of what things are worth.
Okay, so how do you guys handle this when I'll get this question from some people? They'll tell me, well, Tom, inflation must exist. Like, you need inflation in the economy because if prices don't keep going up, it doesn't get people spending, and basically the economy will die. I get that all the time. How do you guys, when you hear that, and I don't know which one of you wants to tackle this, what do you say when you hear that? Does inflation, is it required? Does it need to exist?
I thought it needed to.
Yeah, I thought it did too, yeah.
Yeah, I think this angst, and Seb talked about this angst with the current money is causing these stressors, causing you to look inwards, causing you to be less creative with your time. These are inputs that are being forced upon us. They're not something that could be resolved. Let's say the crop failure is going to be resolved through a quick price signal. We're going to buy less bread, less wheat, whatever that might be. Those that need it more will buy it sooner. But when there's a hidden hand in this market and a lie that there's a 2% increase, when in reality there's a 10% increase in the monetary supply, or a 10% devaluation of your time, energy, and effort, that's going to cause you stress, and you might not, or you likely won't understand why. Certainly the pre-Bitcoin myself did not understand why we weren't keeping up, why we were slowly grinding to dust, no matter what we did. And less and less time created less and less creative energy to come to a solution, to find that solution.
I think when you understand inflation and when you understand Bitcoin, you clearly see that inflation or our monetary system is a negative feedback loop, and Bitcoin's a positive feedback loop. I often tell, when I talk about inflation with clients, I say that with inflation reduces the quality of products and services, and it incentivizes gambling and theft. And people complain about prices every day, but they don't realize that, why our products are being built so cheaply, right? So it's kind of like that. It's a positive feedback loop. I often talk about running on the hamster wheel, and the hamster wheel just keeps on going faster and faster, and people are falling off. I had read an article here, a local...
People are falling off, and the young generation is pissed.
Yeah, I read a local media article here about Ken Sim, and a few of the councillors were criticizing his Bitcoin venture. And they were saying in the article, the councillor said that the mayor should be spending more time focusing on poverty and the homeless. And I'm thinking, that's why he's Bitcoining.
Yeah. They don't understand the base of the problem. Travis, go ahead, sir.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's funny that you mentioned the hamster wheel too, because that's where this argument for inflation, I know that's how I first heard it. It was in economics class in university, and it's very much it's also tied into an article that you can look at, the paradox of savings or paradox of thrift. And it's basically the idea that if people are saving money, this causes aggregate demand to go down, which then ends up where you have prices decreasing. Well, people are going to save money because why would I buy it today if I can buy it cheaper tomorrow? This really, when you really explore this, and Hayek's written a good response to it as well, where you get into it, that fails for a couple reasons. Is one, you have necessities that you have to spend for. It doesn't do me any good if bread's cheaper tomorrow if I don't survive until tomorrow to buy the bread. So there's certain things that you have to spend for. And the other aspect is at the business level, when you have those savings, they end up, it's the paradox, and a lot of the issue comes from people just assuming that when there's capital invested, it's just continuing at the same level of productivity. Where you have investments at a business level that go into increasing productivity, you can have that increased efficiency cause the prices to go down without, where then what that effectively does is increase the real wages of everybody. And it doesn't, at the aggregate level, end up leading to a lower demand and supply. It actually raises it for the overall. So the idea that people will not spend just because their currency is devaluing is a very short-sighted view of it that really doesn't look at kind of the broader, how that plays out through the broader economy.
So I think about this a lot, and where do you guys think we're headed? Like 10 years from today, sitting here in Vancouver, where are we in 10 years if this doesn't change? I know we're going to talk about Bitcoin in a second, I'm sure, and Bitcoin is a bit of it is the life raft for us. But where are we headed in the next 10 years? Do you guys think about, by the way you guys are looking at me, you're like, I don't need to, either you're scared shitless,
I mean,
or like, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to swear here, I apologize.
I'm halfway through When Money Dies, so I'm a little scared.
Yeah, got it.
Which is, for anybody, it's the story of hyperinflation in Weimar Germany. So I don't know that we're going there yet, but maybe 20 years, longer timeline.
But if we use, Aaron, your math, just at 10%, 10 years from now, when everything is more expensive in fiat dollar terms, and if wages don't keep up, we're talking about the Air Canada strike and people fighting for wages right now. I mean, it's not a pretty picture, no? And again, I'm a positive person. We have Bitcoin, but I'm just interested. Where do you think we're headed here?
You know what? I had the staff over the other day. We were having a discussion about Bitcoin, and I pulled out a chart of their wages. We thought we were doing our staff a favor. Anyone who had returned got a 2% wage increase plus another 2% for their experience, so a 4% increase. The reality is, and I'm sitting there with them, showing them they're at a negative 6%, year to year, and and that was going on continuously.
Do they understand that when you shared it?
They did. That caught their attention. When I said I need to give you a 50% pay raise minimum, more likely 100% pay raise to get you back to where you were when you began working with us. That's the kind of destructive effect that is going on right now. And I see this in we have an optional activity. Going kayaking is just a fun thing to do. That is not groceries, that is not rent, that's not clothing. We're seeing the decline in the under 30-year-olds, the under 40-year-olds. They just will not come out and use our cheapest product, which is a rental. We see American tourists.
And you think that's because of the cost?
I think it's because they have no money. They are broke. They're done. And you're going to see businesses, anything that is optional in your life will be cut out of your life. We will slowly grind downwards.
I think about that a lot because with my brother and our business, I think, in the past, Canadians could buy rental properties. I know now that's like taboo, especially amongst Bitcoiners, but I mean, Canadians would come out and try to add a rental property to their lives to try to help them build a financial portfolio to outpace debasement and that sort of thing. But I just think forward 10 years and I'm like, 10 years from today, is that client base that came to our business in Ontario even really going to exist? Like, will they have the disposable savings to even put a down payment on their property? And I'm not sure that population exists, but anyway, another matter. Dale, did you want to jump in on this?
That's a really hard question because I didn't know that things were going to move as fast as they have to where we are. Like where Bitcoin was 5 years ago to where we are now, that's been super fast. So it's really hard to tell. What I'm often confused by is that people, there's all of the Bitcoin predictors out there. Everyone's talking about $1 million Bitcoin. Saylor is talking about $15 million Bitcoin, and that's great. But nobody talks about what is the cost of living going to be when a Bitcoin is $1 million, right? Like right now in Saskatchewan, a husband and wife, they need minimum $100,000 just to get by. Right, so in 5 years or 10 years, what's going to be the cost of living in fiat terms? Is it going to be $500,000? It could be $1 million. Just basic cost of living to get by. What is that going to be? I don't know. So it's hard to tell.
Okay, so I'm interested. How are you guys explaining Bitcoin and your certainty in Bitcoin to your friends? I'm interested in what you guys share with your friends just about Bitcoin and how you approach it. One of the ways some of my friends who are completely, like I've talked about Bitcoin to them for 5 years straight, and they just will not have it. And I was trying to explain to them with this inflation idea, I'm like, okay, if you just think about the base of our economy right now and money, let's rewind all the way in our economy to the very first dollar that came into existence in Canada. And this isn't a perfect example because we had a banking system that really kind of was different, and then it got merged together with the Bank of Canada. So this is not a perfect example. But I'm like, just stick with me. Think about the very first dollar that came into existence in this country. That dollar that came into existence, because it's a debt-based money that's entering the economy, it got loaned into the economy through the Bank of Canada. It came with interest owing. So the very first dollar that entered the Canadian economy is owed back with interest. But if the very first dollar that came in the entire economy, only $1 exists, but if the interest rate was 10%, because remember, we have a debt-based money, we borrow our money into existence, that's how it's created. If the very first dollar that entered the economy, you have to pay that back to the Bank of Canada with interest, let's say $1.10. How, if there's only $1 in the economy, do you pay back $1.10? Like, how do you do it? I'm asking my friends, right? Like, I'm looking for help. How do you do that? And the only conclusion I can come up with is you have to borrow more money. So to pay the $1.10 back, we have to go back to the central banking system and borrow another dollar. But that dollar also comes with interest owed. So now in the economy, you have $2.20 outstanding, but only $2 circulating. So, but if you owe $2.20 back, what do? You borrow more money. You borrow, let's say, $2. Now there's $4 in the economy, but there's $4.40 owing. So what do? You borrow more money. And that understanding helped me get so certain with Bitcoin. Because to me, I'm like, oh my God, if I'm 100% certain that in the Canadian economy, M2, our money supply, is just going to keep going up and up and up because mathematically it must, we can have pauses in it. It can slow down. It can even go decrease a little bit. But overall, for the debt-based money system to work, it must keep increasing or the whole house of cards collapses because of those interest payments. It gives me so much certainty in Bitcoin because I'm like, wow, in fiat dollar denominated terms, Bitcoin in fiat dollars is always going to go up and up and up. It's finite, as everyone here was discussing, but the fiat dollars are not, and they can never be finite. They must always increase in supply. And that certainty helped me get really confident in Bitcoin. And that's one way I try to explain it, and I fail miserably. No one ever really kind of gets it, but I think it's like this brilliant example. So I'm just curious with you guys, how do you guys try to explain it, and what's your take on Bitcoin in this whole environment?
I've stopped trying to explain things in a way where people can get it right away. I basically describe how Bitcoin works. I say these are the positives. This is why you should learn it. But I don't expect them to get it. Like, it's truly, people have to come to it themselves. They have to have that realization, figure it out. They've got to come to it themselves, and don't get upset if they don't get it. You just don't. You just have to give them the information and wait for them to come back to you.
You're patient. I like it, yeah.
I try to trigger my fellow CFAs by telling them I'm the most risk-averse investor, which is why I have 100% of my net worth in Bitcoin, which triggers them. And then also that is the most diversified portfolio you can have because it's the everything ETF of all the productivity in the world. So if I'm trying to trigger CFAs, that's how I do it. For anyone else, it's really about seeing where they're at and what questions they have and then addressing them. So I don't kind of have a standard other than like, what are your pain points in the world? Yeah. Okay, let's tie them back to the money in Bitcoin. It's
so tough because you need to understand the monetary system and you need to understand how technology works to understand the decentralization of Bitcoin. So it's such a big conversation, right?
So I focus less on getting them to understand that as far as just, okay, what are the pain points they have and can they understand how that ties back to broken money? And then that triggers the curiosity in them to actually look into the problem.
Got it.
Because if you have to, right, like they have to be curious enough to then go do their own research. There's no way that just talking to me is gonna get them. I don't have enough of a technical understanding or like on whatever specifics they need to understand. Like they've really got to do that work themselves. So it's more about just triggering the curiosity sometimes, which is why I like to trigger CFAs.
I like triggering people too. This is great. It's a great strategy. I'm on board. Aaron.
You know, I do my best to just point out the futility of the fiat system to these people. And a lot of my friends, I have a lot of white-collar friends, high earners that are now working 2 jobs. Their wives are working. There's 3 or 4 jobs in a household, and they're not getting ahead. They're seeing a inflated value on their property, an increased property tax. If you're a fixed income earner, someone like my parents, someone who's into their 80s, they see it. They're living it every day. It's obvious. To help them over that hurdle, to help them cross that chasm, that's the best I think you can do.
So we have time here for one last message from each of us here. What would you like to say? Have at it.
Oh, I was just going to make a comment on even if they have a CPI adjustment within a pension or within any ongoing fixed income, because of some of what we've talked about here today, that doesn't even keep up. So they're still feeling it, even with those adjustments. Buy Bitcoin. I don't know.
It's obvious.
You know what? 21 million, that's the promise. Every morning if I wake up and somebody says Bitcoin has 21 million, that's the limit, I can live with that. I can deal with the short-term price changes due to supply and demand, and no hidden hand in my money. There's 21 million Bitcoin, then we succeed as a project. If not, then we fail.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Dale?
My last message would be just, as a Bitcoiner, be there when they need you.
Mm-hmm.
And don't judge. Like, don't judge them. Don't just be there when they need you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Thanks, guys. We are at our time, so that's a wrap for us. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us here, and appreciate this, guys. Thank you. Thank you.